What do you fear? Is it the unknown? Is it the dark? Or is it what may lie in wait on the edge of reality? What we cannot see yet we feel is there, something watching and waiting for your false sense of safety to return, only to strike and sink its teeth deep into your heart and consume you. What do you hide from when you go to sleep? And what do you hide from when you wake up? What are you afraid of? Welcome to the void, where all the things you fear in the back of your mind take center stage. Last time, I spoke about the strange events leading up to the disappearance of my friend Jason, as well as the manila envelope I received from Dr. Grider that simply had the word Somnium written on its front. Dr. Grider didn't know where Jason had gone, but he suggested that investigating the occurrences Jason had been looking into might help lead me to discovering the truth. I have poured through every bit of the contents within the envelope, and what I found was unnerving to say the least. Within the manila folder that Dr. Grider had sent were documented cases of children, 5 in all, that had been stricken with an unidentifiable ailment that caused them to fall into a deep sleep, near comatose. The investigative reports were conducted by Jason. He describes the condition as near comatose because all of the children afflicted would awaken every few hours or so for verifying lengths of time, no longer than an hour at most, before falling uncontrollable back asleep. And once again, they screamed and cried and begged to be put back to sleep. Jason was only ever able to conduct an interview with the parents of 2 of the children that were afflicted with what he came to call the Somnium, which he explained was Latin for dream. The mother of the first child was also the first that Jason approached for an interview. The USB drive that was contained within the folder, along with the documents, held 2 files. The first was the interview Jason conducted with Julia Hull, the mother of the first child, and I will play that for you now. Just one second. What? It worked earlier. I don't know what's... Oh, there it goes.
Okay. Can you please state your full name and who you are for the record?
My name is Julia Hull, and I am the mother of Brandon Hull.
Thank you for that. And thank you again for this interview. It can't be easy talking about this.
No, I want to.
Good. Miss Hull, can you tell me just exactly when the occurrence began? Did I say something wrong?
What happened to Brandon wasn't an occurrence. It was a goddamn nightmare.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean...
I know, I just don't understand any of this. It still doesn't feel real. I spoke to the police. I spoke to child services. They all grilled me and pointed fingers, and none of them took me seriously. They laughed and judged, and even now that it's happened to another child, it's nowhere in the news. They just ignored it. They're acting like it didn't happen. I don't understand why no one will listen. I'm sorry, this whole thing has me so wound up tight, and I haven't gotten much sleep.
Please, don't apologize. I completely understand. We don't have to do this.
No, I'm fine. It started a month ago, the sleeping. I sent Anna, my daughter, upstairs to wake him up for school after calling up after him several times. She no sooner got halfway up those stairs when the screaming started.
Screaming?
It was horrible. It spilled throughout the house like a wounded animal. It had to be Brandon, of course, but it didn't sound like Brandon.
What do you mean it didn't sound like him?
I don't know. It's hard to explain. It wasn't like anything I had ever heard.
So then, what did you do?
Well, I ran upstairs, obviously. What do you mean, what did I do?
Sorry. What I meant was, what happened?
I went into his room and he just kept screaming and shaking. I asked him what was wrong, what was happening, but he just kept screaming over and over. I didn't know what to do. I was going to call for an ambulance, but then all at once, he stopped.
Why exactly?
I don't know what made him quit. He just stared straight forward and finally his head turned toward me for the first time, as if he had only just realized then I was in the room. Quietly and calmly, he asked if he could go back to sleep. I was stunned and lost for words. I didn't answer him. I just stood there staring back at him with my mouth open as he lay back in his bed and fell asleep.
That must have been traumatizing for you.
Are you shitting me? Traumatizing doesn't come close to how that felt. What was I even supposed to do? They asked me why I didn't call for an ambulance or the police, but you didn't hear him scream. It wasn't right. It wasn't human.
Really, Miss Hall, I can conduct my investigation without this being on the record.
It's almost over anyway. I may as well finish. 2 hours went by. He would wake up and he would scream and cry before he went back to sleep. I didn't leave his side, not even when he got up and started screaming again.
Where was your daughter at this point?
Anna was at school. She rode the bus.
In all of Brandon's screaming, did he say anything coherent?
There was, actually. He said that he wanted to go back.
Go back where?
To sleep.
Then what happened?
I called an ambulance. My disbelief and shock finally broke, and I left the room and called for an ambulance. I swear to God, it doesn't make sense. I was right outside his room when it happened. It doesn't make any goddamn sense.
What doesn't make sense, Miss Hall?
When I came back, Brandon had disappeared. He was nowhere. I looked under the bed. I looked in the closet. I even ran around outside searching, but his window was closed. And I was outside the only entrance to his room. He just vanished.
Did you hear anything before he was taken?
No, Why did you say that?
I'm sorry?
Why did you say before he was taken?
I'm sorry. Poor choice of words. I meant, did you hear anything just before he disappeared?
No, not a sound at all. I'm telling you, it doesn't make any sense. He just disappeared. I looked like a crazy ranting lunatic when the paramedics arrived, and I was even detained for questioning once the police arrived. They still don't believe me.
If it's any consolation, Miss Hall, I absolutely believe you.
Oh, and why is that? Have you spoken to the other families with missing children?
Well, no. You're the first that agreed to be interviewed, but I've dealt with things similar to this in the past.
Do you know where my son is?
No. But I promise, I'll try my best to find out.
Forgive me if that isn't comforting. Anna? Jesus Christ!
I've played the second audio file on the drive several times, and I'll play it for you now, but, well, you'll see.
Can you state your full name, please, for the record? Thank you for agreeing to do this interview, Miss Valentine. I know this isn't easy. When was it that your daughter first began to exhibit disturbing behavior?
I would play more for you, but there's nothing else to gain from the audio. Jason just asks basic questions. For some reason, the person's voice he is speaking to is completely distorted. The file was labeled Interview with Joseph Valentine. which gave me his full name, presumably. I have to say, though, at that point, I was very, very interested. Regardless of whether this would lead me to Jason, I was curious about these occurrences. Luckily, thanks to Jason's tendencies to restlessly log everything he had done on paper, I had the means to look into it. The children were all abducted in the same town, Westville. It was a small community, no more than a 20-minute drive from where I lived. Like Julia had mentioned in her interview, I had seen nothing in the news about children screaming from their beds, begging to be put back to sleep. He also had the phone numbers of both the parents he'd interviewed, so naturally, I started with phone calls. Joe Valentine was the first one I called, as he was the one I was most eager to speak to. I tried the number that Jason had written, but there was no answer. The phone simply rang and rang. Then there was no voicemail. After about the 15th ring or so, I conceded and hung up. And Julia was next. And that was the phone call I was honestly dreading. I was sure that it was her daughter screaming at the very end of the interview I heard. If it meant what my gut was telling me, this would not be a pleasant conversation. I dialed her number, and on the third ring, the woman answered.
Hello?
Hello, is this Julia Hull?
Yes, who am I speaking to?
Well, this might sound a little strange, but I'm a colleague of Jason Vidith. You were interviewed by him.
Oh, yes. How is Jason?
Well, he's missing. I'm sort of trying to retrace his steps. One of the cases he took on involved disappearances in your town, so I'm calling everyone he interviewed.
That's terrible to hear. Jason helped me quite a lot when he came to town.
He did?
Absolutely. Being able to talk to someone who seemed to really understand and want to help, it made things easier to cope with. My Brandon is still gone, and I'll never stop looking. But Jason still visited town once a month, checking in and making sure everything was fine. Most people probably thought that the work he did was nuts. But you know.
Yeah, I suppose I do. What about your daughter?
Anna? She's fine. Why do you ask? Did Jason think she was ever in danger?
Well, I don't know. In the interview I listened to, I heard a scream at the end.
What? Oh, yes. She climbed up onto the sink in the kitchen and fell, and nearly gave us a heart attack. She landed on her bottom, though.
Oh, I see. Well, I guess I have to ask, when was the last time you were in contact with Jason?
Oh, a few weeks ago, I suppose. You don't think what happened to Brandon happened to Jason, do you?
No, if I had to guess, I would say I didn't. But I'd be remiss if I didn't look into it.
Will you be investigating the other disappearances as well?
There have been more?
Oh, yeah. Many more. Jason didn't mention anything?
Well, I only have a couple notes of his. And by chance. How many children have gone missing in total?
Oh my. I don't know exactly. I'd say at least 20. I've just counted myself lucky to still have my Anna.
I had no idea. Why hasn't this been in the news?
I don't know, but you heard me before if you listened to our interview. We've all tried to go to the police, those of us that are left anyway. No one listened. Some people have left town, but I can't afford it. I'm stuck here. There hasn't been a disappearance in over a month now, though. I just pray we're in the clear.
I see. Listen, do you mind if I come out there and conduct an interview? I'm sorry to ask, but it would be for the purpose of retracing Jason's steps this time. I don't want to bring back bad memories.
They're all bad memories now, Mr. Dixon. You're welcome to come, but it'll be a dead end, I'm sure. I don't think...
Mommy, there's someone outside.
Just a minute, honey. Someone's at the door. You guys still have my address, right? It's the same one.
Yes, it's here. I'll be heading out tomorrow, around 11 in the morning, I think.
I'll be expecting you. Take care, Mr. Dixon.
You too. Julia sounded much more lively on the phone than I had expected. She must be truly grateful to still have her daughter. I know I would be in her situation. I felt uneasy when I got off the phone with Julia, however. It was very strange. I stood from my desk where I'd been sitting, and I found myself unable to turn around. I felt as if I was being watched. If I turned around to face my window in my office, it would be very, very bad. The dread in the pit of my stomach was such that I felt I might burst. Finally, after several moments, I turned to look, forcing myself to stare at the window. I saw it briefly, a flash of white and black, and it was gone. Someone was there. I know it. It didn't make any sense. I walked over to the window and looked down at the empty street below. My office was on the second floor of my house. These disturbing events are unsettling, but I won't stop until I've unraveled the mystery behind what has happened to Jason. That's not just it, though. I stood staring out my window, down into the empty street, right at the space where I knew I was being watched. I felt terrified, sure, but I also became a little excited. I now knew why Jason did what he did, why he constantly searched for things unexplained. He wanted to find the truth. And a little part of me is very curious about what happened in Westville to all those children. It seems like someone or something doesn't want me finding out. Join me next time, where I'll be traveling to the town of Westville in an effort to retrace Jason's steps. Maybe even find out what exactly happened to those missing children. With any luck, I won't